All right.
I like my hypothetical situations rather than political situations.
Alrighty. Here we go. We are live in person.
Hola, la
is
internet.
audio.
Me amo Lord Shotgun.
Hey, yo. How's everybody
And
doing?
this is Victor Chirano. How do you do?
Awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and just pop out a wheel here so that way everybody can see what's going on and who's talking, so on and so forth. Alright.
Indeedly, dude.
Welcome to Let's Talk Battletech. This is a series that I did a long time ago, actually. Probably almost a year and a half ago when I did this with Justin, where we would just discuss Battletech topics and other things like that and things that intermingle and in between. So to get this started, what do you guys think about the new releases that are coming out?
I have not been following for a hot minute.
That's unfortunate because kind of same with me. I've read Bonfire Worlds. I've been keeping sort of up to date on the general scenario.
So the big one is Mercenaries.
Up to the current canon. Yeah. I'm not even at what's going on.
Well, I'm not even talking about book canon. I'm talking about the newest box releases that are coming out is the Mercenaries pack.
I want more plastic minis.
Yeah, I love more plastic minis always.
Yeah, I don't particularly like metal. That's just me.
That's fair. Actually, that's a great point you bring up. Plastic versus metal. What is your preference?
I guess I'll start. My first minis I ever got were a bunch of pewter Chaos Raptors way back in the day when I was a wee lad, and so pewter actually holds a really special place in my heart. I know they're very hard to actually paint. I know they're a pain in the ass, and I know they're so heavy that if you threw a bag full of them, you could knock someone's teeth out. Part of me always liked that. But I do understand the move generally to resin and plastic because it's just easier to paint. They
are significantly malleable. Easier to work with.
So here's I'll let Chirano go first, and then I'll say my piece.
Yeah,
go for it. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I like the move toward resin. I like the move toward plastics because it makes it A, cheaper for everyone, and B, so much more accessible in terms of painting, even if they are monopose or multi-part put together.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. What I would also kind of like to see is maybe a move toward pre-painted miniatures.
Hey, we got an Orinoco. Welcome.
Hey. Yeah, anyway, sort of like a move toward pre-painted miniatures for, premium sets, you know?
Yeah.
You got some guy painting stuff up, sort of like, the old X-Wing miniatures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can see that.
Mm-hmm. So that way people can see what a battle mech is supposed to look like when painted.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Orinoco, what we are discussing right now is what do you prefer, metal or plastic/resin in your miniatures? If you can hear us. Or if you're somehow muted. Oh no.
Oh. Womp womp.
Orinoco shows up, can't talk. What clanner sorcery is this?
The clanners. They've interfered.
He's being tagged.
Or is it Comstar?
I'm not one. I mean, I'll always blame planners first.
Hey, there he is.
So there it goes. Yeah.
I guess I touched the top of my mic recently or something.
Oh.
The top of my mic is a mute thing.
Oh yeah. You have a mute button at the top.
Well, not like a mute button, but more if I just like a sensor. If I touch up there, it just turns it off.
Gotcha. But yeah, we're doing some just chatting. We're gonna talk about some Battletech stuff and other random things in between. For right now.
Perhaps we'll get to drama.
Maybe we'll see. But yeah, so you mostly use resin, right?
I mostly use resin minis. I've seen like metal minis. Uh, oh, but I haven't actually used them.
Okay.
Like I haven't used metal mini.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse
So
me.
I've used both, and I have a distinct preference for larger minis. I want them in metal. For big stuff, I want them in metal. The durability is nicer. It's much easier to, I think, to work with when they are bigger and they're made of metal because they tend to have better durability, especially for the detailed aspects of them. I think smaller resin minis are cheaper, much easier to afford, and definitely work better for more detailed projects, especially when you're working with smaller minis. That's always been kind of my thought process around it. I just don't see Battletech giving us larger size things. So there's really no reason for them to have metal minis aside from standalone, like, this isn't for the tabletop, this is just to show.
Yeah. And
So they're like those
how
giant
large do you
Primaris action
mean? Do
figures.
you mean
I mean, at least double the size of a standard mini.
okay?
You'll have to
Well,
excuse
then,
me,
yeah, it's
I am
actually worth
eating breakfast
computers.
at the same time. I'm having a bowl of sausage and eggs.
How dare you have breakfast? How dare you fulfill your basic needs?
I know, human
know.
conditioning. It's so
What a
scary.
fucking bastard. An absolute worm.
Absolute worm. Totally. But anyways.
Yeah. No, see, for
Jokes
me,
aside,
it kind of comes down to I agree. I would like more pewter models if they were going to be larger set pieces.
Mhm.
I think honestly, pewter really works if you're trying to get a centerpiece going. Because
Yeah.
if you have something, I mean, that's the thing. Pewter actually does contribute a sort of gravitas to a model that I think plastic does lose. Because, like I said, I've got a bunch of old, pewter Chaos Marines, and there's something about the new plastic models that just doesn't really grab them as much as a painted pewter model. I think it's just there's a metallic sheen even under that much paint that you kind of can see. I think if we were going to push for super heavies to be really brought back into the film of Battletech and like it's its standard sort of
honestly,
then yeah.
Honestly, I can see where you're coming from. I'd rather it be a choice, you know? I'd like a pewter or a...
I think it'll always be a choice in that sense. That's for sure. It's always going to be a choice of preference there.
But I would like more detail in my stuff.
Yeah. I do like detail in my stuff. I think
and
metal
I
does
see
better
that
with
easier
bigger
in
stuff.
Plastic.
I only see it easier in plastic for smaller miniatures because it's easier to work with that way, but for bigger things, metal does better.
Like I said, look, if you're going to start selling the
Again,
old, what do you call it, those goofy tripods, if you're going to start selling those, do them in pewter. That would work.
I mean, metal is also nicer in terms of durability when you have more intricate or more delicate like
Components.
designs on it, where it might have like a tail and might taper off, and then if it gets too far like away, it just gets more brittle and brittle.
Yeah. That's where metal has its value. But I think because battle mechs are inherently blocky flat forms, they lend themselves very well in small sizes to resin and plastic. But if you were to do a really high detailed, like maybe a mech that's like 2 soda cans in size.
Oh yeah, which Battletech is not going to do unless they're trying to build a...
people have been making
40K.
Those models.
Yeah, you can make those models, but if you're playing for at a 40K scale thing where you're moving individual dudes.
Yeah. I think that will always remain in plastic for that reason.
This is where again I say if and there's definitely no community outcry for super heavies right now, but if they ever wanted to go wild with them, I could totally see you sell a box of plastic minis, and hey, if you want a little bit extra, here's this fucking Poseidon we made. It's all pewter, and it's twice the size because it would be. It's super heavy. It's like 200 tons. It's cool.
Yeah.
This thing should dwarf an Atlas, and therefore the feeling of clinking that bastard down with a tink. Yes, here's my super heavy. It's made of
Metal also has that sense of luxury to it. It's got that real sense of luxury that comes with it.
Dude, whenever I whip out my old pewter fucking Chaos Marines, people are always a little bit impressed. It's like, wow, you've maintained these. They've been bent to shit. They're like still in good condition. I'm like, hell yeah, they are. I mean, then they promptly fucking get vaporized because the new rules. I'm bad at it. But yeah, I mean, they look cool.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. So moving on from the topic of minis, because like I have clan box sets next to me right now, along with some Inner Sphere stuff, which I need to actually paint myself at some point because I have driven my other GM insane.
Paint your stuff, or do you want to paint your stuff?
I want to do it both. So that's another topic we can talk about: painting minis.
Oh God!
I want to do it because I want to learn how, but at the same time, I'm almost scared to do it.
I'm frustrated with the process. I delegate to my sister, who enjoys the process.
I have another GM who I've delegated painting minis to. He's now very upset at me for giving it to him because he's like, I love this project, but I hate it at the same time.
Well, he just didn't want to really do it in anyway, but he's liking it because it's actually something he can do without having to care about features like you would on a humanoid mini.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for my 10 cents, the only things I've ever successfully painted are these pewter minis I keep touting. I have a whole clan box set that is sat pretty much in the box because I'll only play them gray. Just because, same thing. Plus, I'm poor and cannot afford that many paints.
Also true. I am poor. I cannot afford things. Money is difficult.
No, those.
As the man sits there rubbing his money, that is Orinoco.
Yes, money.
I mean, if you want to send some of that money to me, I would not be unappreciated.
Are we asking for a redistribution of wealth?
No, but if you want to work for it.
Fair enough.
Get that dollar bill by putting in the effort.
Yeah. Yep.
Dollar bills, y'all. God.
Well, so long as it's less stressful than my current job, maybe. I don't know.
Totally off topic. Battletech is like one of the only settings that gives me legitimate money envy sometimes because I understand that a C-bill is just $10 USD. I mean, probably more like 12 now. But just the idea that,
on current canon, from what I hear, but
Yeah, the idea of economic expansion is very interesting.
Just the life of a mercenary and how it really could set you up for forever on any backwater of your choosing. Like, if you cash in and cash out real quick, it's a hell of a game. You walk away with millions of C-bills, and that's ridiculous money. That's more than enough to set you up for life. Get out of the lifestyle, but nobody wants to.
So let's talk about that for a second. Why is it that the mercenary lifestyle in Battletech works? So I want to hear your guys' opinion.
In a world of autocrats.
Well, there's several reasons. It's actually interesting because I've read a lot of the fluff. Mercenaries, of course, as you know, people joke it's the world's oldest profession next to prostitution. But in Battletech, it waxes and wanes, right? During the Age of War, it was pretty common to have mercenary bands because, the Age of War was a time period before Battletech. So any gaggle of douchebags in a tank could theoretically be a traveling band of mercenaries. But then, you sort of have this this era of the Star League where mercenaries really fell out of style. They existed more as security contractors, like in our world now. the day and age of a mercenary army is kind of well and truly gone, sort of, in our time period now. I know across rates, but
I have some
the
comments
gist
on
of it
that.
is, of course. But what I'm saying is, the days of the land knights or the Lancashires, where it's like,
Yeah.
here's a battalion, several armies worth of dudes for hire. That just doesn't exist anymore. It's small, specialized teams providing specialized service that a military cannot or does not want to provide. And that's kind of what that's why I find something very interesting about Antilius Legios, the Maris's right-hand mercenary commander. He sort of came up in this time period where mercenary work was cloak and dagger. Mercenary work was you disguise yourselves as a couple pirates and then blow up a fuel refinery, and that gave way, though, when Starleague collapsed, to a professional business model because it just became practical. It became pragmatic to, instead of putting all your resources in maintaining garrisons, in holding these regions, it was just easier to buy guys with guns. And you're also talking about the proliferation of privatized armies after the Starleague falls, because you have so many Starleague regulars just go, fuck it. I'm going to make money. I'm going to get mine.
Yeah.
And so I'd say that, and then of course, then you have a Republic of the Sphere era and the post-Jihad era, where that also collapsed. Like, mercenaries were at their height post-clan invasion, because you had essentially a mercenary army under the command of Wolf's Dragoons. And that was a big issue for the Wobbies. That's why the Wobbies decided the first people they were going to fight tooth and nail was Wolf's Dragoons, because Wolf's Dragoons was arguably the only power that wasn't politically tied enough to fight them. And from there, you go to really a serious decline, because it looks like in Dark Age, mercenaries, while they're standard, are just not nearly what they used to be. They can't control nearly as large forces as they used to. They're clearly not as readily deployed because the HPG net's really fucked up, so you can't just call Comstar on the line and get a few guys sent to you. That's just not a thing. So
Yeah.
I'd say that mercenary work has risen and declined depending on what the infrastructure is at the time.
Okay. So, Orinoka, what are your thoughts on it?
On mercenaries?
Yeah, on the why does mercenary work in the Battletech universe? Or if it doesn't, then why doesn't it?
It more works because no one wants to really, well, housing and building up an army is pretty expensive, especially with most planets not really having the capability of mustering up and keeping a standing army going. It's much easier to mostly just put out mercenary contracts, as well as a lot of people are pretty wealthy off. But the setting also tends to have these militaristic and just ambitious people who want to get out there and make more money or kill things. My Adam Casanova is a prime example of someone who went into mercenary work because he wanted to blow things up.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to. He has he's got a pretty high property thing. He's basically set for his life even without doing mercenary work.
Yeah.
But this way he can use his bombs and not do any detriment to his his place.
Yeah. So my particular thought about this in particular, especially for the Battletech universe, is that mercenaries work because the traditional sense of mercenary is fitting that traditional sense of the Lancashires, the mercenaries for hire of traditional medieval stylings, which is that since it is basically a neo-feudalistic era in which you have small fiefdoms and kingdoms, and that because it's so difficult to control everybody, there are going to be secular powers that respond to one another, and you basically call upon them through political means to subjugate others. And because there's so much distance and there is so much unknown essentially in between, especially when it comes to communications networks, it creates that feeling of needing to be able to pay the guy with the gun to not shoot you.
Well, there's also this lovely little thing, and I think Cherno touched on it a little bit, the fact that this is a setting full of autocrats.
Yeah.
In that you have planets that probably don't want to be Capellan. You know, I mean, you have worlds that you control that probably don't want to be under your control. And those people could, in theory, have enough resources, rifles, and rockets to say, no, you know, we're going to declare some level of weird independence, or we're going to defect to the Davians.
The St.
And you
Ives
don't
combat.
necessarily want to send... Yeah, but that's the thing. You don't necessarily want to send your citizens to go deal with them. As a Capellan, you don't want to send Capellan soldiers to put down a Capellan riot, because there's a really good chance that the Capellan soldiers might feel some level of sympathy. I mean, I know they're Capellans, they probably won't, but let's just say hypothetically, right? Then you send mercenaries, because mercenaries don't care about these goddamn people. They don't care about their plight. They don't care if you've been starving them for like 3 years and taxing them, They just want their money and to get their job done. And if that means they have to step on a few civilian guerrillas, then so be it. You know, it's no big deal to them. And that's a big thing that post Starlink, you needed that kind of force projection, and militaries cannot reliably, unless you're the Draconis Combine. This is why uniquely the Draconis Combine has always had a weird culture around mercenaries, whereas everyone else considers them kind of a matter of course in the succession wars. Because a Shireen officer could totally order his mech warriors to open fire on a civilian protest. That's just a thing he is totally within his bounds to do and will be done without question. Meanwhile, anywhere else, it's a bit of a coin flip. You're not really going to get Fed Sons mech warriors with this proud tradition of being ennobled defenders of democracy and justice. You're not going to get them to just step on a bunch of clean miners and say they're illiterate. That's not going to happen. But you can hire enough Canopian mercenaries; they'll step on anybody. You know.
Yeah, and it also gives way to the fact that it helps to balance out noble intentions
Just be
with
careful
dark.
with Canopian cat girls stepping on people.
It gives way to those intentions of like noble ideas are backed up by bad actions usually.
It's very simple. If you imagine that the battle mech is the same and equivalent to like a 14th century thoroughbred warhorse, suddenly things really make sense the way they work. Because just like a 14th century thoroughbred warhorse, you cannot have that thing without the infrastructure first to care for it, stable it, mend it when it's sick. And the battle mech is very much the same kind of animal. Only a few 100,000 people own battle mechs in Battletech. And what I love about Battletech is that can range from, a highborn, trained from the age of 7 in like knightly Davian fashion to be a mech warrior and to operate this beautiful family heirloom awesome or some other mech. Then you got Joe Bob down Towering Concordia, and I just learned on some power lifters, and then I done found this Phoenix Hawk in a crate. And that guy is just as valid as a warrior, as a soldier of fortune, as potentially a feudal lord as anybody else. He has a mech.
Pretty much.
That's what I mean. Mechs.
If you have a mech, you have a tremendous multiplication of force.
Yeah.
You get elevated to a new class of warrior, and in this society, that elevates you to a new class of person.
Yeah. It kind of harkens back to the times of like 18th century Vikings, essentially, in the sense that like any mook with a sword could become a Viking. Because by the way, if people don't understand this, Vikings are just pirates from Scandinavia. That's all they are. They're just pirates from Scandinavia. We just love them because of their culture and the fact that they taught us how to take a bath. and they made England a little more clean.
There's also that beautiful reputation of Odin worship and this warrior society that just, if nothing else, dying in battle is the best. It's the best thing you can achieve. It is the most honorable thing you can achieve. It is above and beyond everything else.
And it's kind of what inspired a lot of knightliness going forward. It was
So you can definitely argue that the Catholic Knight is very much inspired by the brave pagan he had to defeat to become the dominant force of Europe.
Yeah.
The siege of Lithuania was not fucking done in a night. And the Lithuanian wars are fucking crazy because you have like the last pagan kingdom in the north fighting all of Catholic Europe. And you have all of Catholic Europe going, these fucking demon-possessed, axe-wielding maniacs won't die. They respond to a cavalry charge by countercharging on foot. This is insanity. That environment bred the knight that then went on to kick the shit out of Muslim Middle East, out of the Islamic forces, because these dudes were so hardened by centuries of ridiculous combat and one-upsmanship in the way of valor.
Yeah. And that's not to say anything about the wars themselves. It's more to do with the culture that's behind it. It has to do with that idea.
You had Muslim scholars referring to English knights as men of iron because of the way they fight and the fact that their plate armor was more advanced due to the constant warfare and the way of warfare in that area. You know, in the Middle East, you didn't just cavalry charge and then get stuck in and start bashing people over the head with your hammer. You wheeled around. You used the terrain to your advantage a lot more because it's open desert. You benefited more from being light and mobile. And then you had these functional armored tanks that would just come rolling down with this belief system that if I die in battle, it does not matter. I will go to the grace and glory of God. I have a wonderful chivalric code that demands I face my enemy, that demands I do not retreat.
Yeah.
And you didn't have very much the same traditions in the Islamic world because that just wasn't necessary. You know, unless you called specifically a jihad, and a jihad was a struggle against an enemy that threatened all of, God, what's the term? Not Muslim, but you know what I mean.
But all of your religion, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. This is an enemy of everything you stand for, therefore you must fight them with everything.
Yeah.
But other than that, you didn't have Islamic soldiers bravely standing and dying pointlessly to defend a position. They'd go, oh, this is lost. We need to retreat and then reconsider. Whereas you'd have English forces that would just die, like pointlessly in mad defenses of like, this is a church. This is a piece of dirt in the middle of a desert. You don't need to tactically die for it, but it's our faith.
Yeah.
It's the way we've done war.
It's a strong
and you see
motivator.
A lot of that you see that a lot of in Battletech to an extent as well. And not
it pretty much
as,
entirely follows the Dark Ages in its complete sense. Because, essentially, the Succession Wars are the Dark Ages. You are following the idea
years of constant unrestricted warfare.
Yeah. It's just straight, and the loss of technology and the damaging things that they've done. There were innovations within the Succession Wars, but they were based on the necessity of warfare. They weren't based on the necessity of improving lives necessarily, or to do anything specific necessarily. It was for warfare and warfare alone. And when warfare extends into long periods of time, usually, it tends to devolve into what is the most efficient form of battle. I
think the interesting thing about the Succession Wars, and why I'm very sad that 500-year span is not more deeply explored, because at the end of the day, of course, as text does, text usually sums things up beautifully. The inner sphere forces proceeded to nuke each other and then pry irradiated rubble and beat each other over the head with it. The Succession Wars at some point were not fought for necessity. They were fought originally for high political ambition, for I will conquer the galaxy. You had every side intent and certain that they could, with enough force and enough will, become victorious, become the power of the inner sphere. And it was simply impossible because the way they fought war made it impossible. Because they're fighting war the same way, in theory, we would fight war now. Hey, we have nuclear weapons. Hey, we have, powerful weapons of mass destruction. And if it's more expedient to simply vaporize an enemy position and then overtake it, then I'll do that. But the problem with war for expedience's sake, war for the sake of simply winning and taking a piece of dirt, means that you're more than willing to burn everything of value down just to get there. They were using weapons that could not and would not allow you to really expand beyond your immediate sphere. Which is why the borders have basically been locked for 500 years.
Yeah, and that's what the third and fourth Succession Wars are about, is that there was a change in mindset, just like it was in the Dark Ages, that there's really no point in burning the crops and salting the land when why did I take it in the first place then?
Well, you also have to understand that the logistics and the infrastructure went away. Starleague provided your trade system. Starleague provided your resources. Starleague ensured that certain weapons were sold. There were giant corporate conglomerates that existed purely on selling secondhand Starleague weapon systems. Assassins. You mean that mech alone exists because the Starleague went, these kind of suck. I'll just sell them off for, without that main body, suddenly the style of war fell the fuck apart. There's nobody left to build the fucking assassins. There's nobody left to ensure that, food arrives on time to this one, shitty little colony. There is nobody left but your overlords who ostensibly don't give a shit about you and would gleefully sacrifice you for one more planet added to their little, their legacy. So at the end of the day, that's
the Age of War is also the same way. The Age of War is the same way with the Terran Hegemony. You basically get to watch this collapse happen like twice in a row.
Oh yeah, but that's the beautiful thing about Battletech is that it's very.
Well, it's also the thing about humanity is that we are cyclically.
I definitely think it explores that cycle very nicely.
The best way I've ever explained Starleague to a newcomer is it's space realm. They existed. They built a lot of impressive things in their time. They elevated society as a whole, and then they stupidly, violently, barbarically fell apart into infighting. It's very much the Roman Empire.
I would definitely agree with that sentiment. Is they violently and barbarically fell apart.
I mean, that is the point, though, because that's what Stefan Amaris. Okay, so again, I'm going way off here. But Stefan Amaris is my favorite character in BattleTech because of what he represents. It's not just the Hun at the gate, not just the barbarian at the periphery, but what happens when you create a society and a power structure that far outstrips the social development of other cultures, right? Stefan Amaris was a periphery warlord, was a third world dictator in a world full of space and highfalutin, neo-democratic feudal societies. He was Chairman Mao in a world of cyberpunk futuristic nonsense. And he did what Chairman Mao would have done. He seized immediate power and created a terrible situation for everyone for his own ideology. Now, granted, I like Stefan Amaris because he's a very apolitical bad guy. He's a typical evil, scheming vizier who overtakes the rightful rule and then simply does it for his own ego and his own.
And he has a bib. Any man with a bib is a supervillain. Like, comically supervillainish.
Look, man, the bib, what they don't tell you is everyone was wearing those bibs at the time. Just like the Hitler stash, everyone did it at the time. It's only bad now because Amaris did it.
Yeah.
Go back in time, I'm sure you'll find some hidden photos of Kerensky in a Starleague bib. I bet you money.
That's why Shoney's and Golden Corral fell off.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's another thing. Something I find very funny about Kerensky as a character, and I don't know necessarily what this speaks to, but the fact that several designs of mech that Amaris championed and that worked very well, like the Dragoon is an excellent example. If anyone knows the Dragoon battle mech, it was a fucking monster. It was a goddamn marauder on steroids. It kicked unbelievable amounts of ass. And at the end of the war, Kerensky ordered all lines destroyed and that all its data removed. And I never understood that. Because I understand the Dragoon probably became this awful symbol of Amaris Rimworld's oppression at some point, because it was called a Dragoon. It was given to his Dragoons, which are Amaris' most elite forces. But at the end of the day, it was such a good model. I can't believe that it was just, he decided it's verboten. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because Kerensky struck me as a pragmatic man, not an ideological man. So that move always seems strange.
I think that's where I'm going to disagree with you. I think that Kerensky is an ideologue with practical means of getting things done. But I absolutely believe that Kerensky is an ideologue. I don't think he's practical.
I guess you're right. I guess compared to his son, he's more practical. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, who isn't an ideologue in this?
I actually honestly argue Amaris was the only non-ideologue. You could argue that Amaris had no ideology. He was just about himself.
Yeah, no, I think Amaris is 100% practical in what he did. He's just insane. It's just, it seems insane to think that, like, I'm going to do everything for myself and the benefit of myself at the cost of everyone
Nobody
else. That's not ideological. That's just selfish. That's practically selfish.
Which is why I love him. He's the best villain the setting ever had. Because that, what more can you say? That's a dude you could hate universally.
Now hold on
There's
now.
no angle.
Nikolai Malthus is the greatest villain ever. Because he's not a real villain, but he's the greatest villain ever.
That's fair.
Because he's such a meme.
That's such a meme, indeed. I guess no amount of Shoney's memes can really defeat You Dare Refuse My Bachal.
How many of you, I know that Shotgun has definitely seen it. Have the rest of you watched the old Battletech cartoon at all?
I've seen bits and pieces of it, but the dip in quality after a couple of them, it just really turned me off. And it's that they're not very well preserved, and that's a shame.
Oh yeah.
I think that's part of the times of it, but also it wasn't a really well-made show to begin with. It's pretty much a meme. An in-universe meme. And if anybody doesn't know about it, the Battletech cartoon was produced in, the 1990s?
Something like that.
Something along those lines. I have to look it up again. Renegade HPG has all remastered episodes of it that they basically recolorized and retexturized to make them up to date. So they're pretty much watchable. And they're also free.
Yeah, I've watched that whole series. It's very good.
I have as well, and they're a fantastic look at it, but they are not considered canon. In terms of the story is not canon.
Propaganda.
Yeah, they are in-universe propaganda, which, by the way, GW, take some fucking notes.
If you want to retcon some shit,
that's how you retcon. That is how you retcon bad shit.
We retcon all of Alaric Ward's works to it's just some horrible agitprop from the Republic of the Sphere. This is what'll happen. You'll have a deranged, inbred clan warlord. You'll take Terra. You'll turn it all to shit. We elect Devlin Stone.
Okay, so let's talk about the Ill Clan era really quick then. What are your thoughts around it? We're going to start with Chiranu, and then we'll end with you, Shotgun.
Not there yet. I am hopeful for it, but I haven't caught up to the lore. I'm waiting for the book that's relevant to catch everybody up to speed.
Where are you at then with it?
I am at the clan invasion.
Okay.
I mean, I know a whole bunch of the tech from later on, but that's because I wanted to fuck around with it.
Okay. So
but I don't know the lore.
You haven't gotten to the point where you've actually even experienced the Ill Clan era itself.
Yes, no, I'm still stuck way in the past.
Okay, alright, fair enough, fair enough.
You should be, honestly.
Orinoka, what do you think of the Ill Clan era?
I am the oblivious person of the Battletech lore. You got really into that, and I just didn't care. But I am definitely playing the game, but I just didn't care.
So, if somebody were to explain to you that the Ill Clan era is, in essential, the clans forming under a new banner while still being clanners, and pretty much kicking everybody's ass to take Terra. That's pretty much what the Ill Clan era is. What do you think of that?
We glossed over some terrible writing, but yes.
Well, I tried to. I tried to make it as simple as possible.
I think that's an interesting way to go. That's perhaps the end of the clan story arc.
I kind of agree.
Interesting to see, like, now that they have completed their one and only goal.
What do they do? Yeah. Well, what do they do?
Die horribly. Because everybody who ever took... Sorry, I'll shut up.
Yeah, no.
Like,
you're good.
They're based on, like, the... I'm assuming they have some tie to, the Huns.
Yes, they're based off of the Mongols and, like, the modern Chinese.
So, like... Yeah, that they basically just get what they wanted there, and then it's like, all right, they got it.
Now what?
Where do they go?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the same thing that happened to Genghis Khan when he got what he wanted, which is most of the world, which is then it all fell apart. It just all collapsed.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't have if he hadn't had that fateful brain aneurysm when he was off purging a rebellious tribe. I always love that story.
So, what are your thoughts, Shotgun?
Well, geez, do I have thoughts and thoughts on thoughts, but I'll sum it up quickly. I read Bonfire of Worlds all the way through, so I know the essential bedrock that does form Ill Clan era, and then I've kind of stayed. I've stayed as up to date on it as I can. The problem is they're not telling us a whole hell of a lot, and that's my problem.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
As far as that's kind of my issue, is that Ill Clan could be decent, but Bonfire of Worlds was not a good showing for either. And the Ultimate Fight for Terra was also not a good showing at all for Jade Falcon or Clan Wolf. Because functionally what I watched was the clans abandon pretty much everything that made them clans to adopt this weird hodgepodge that doesn't jive, my brother. Because you have Malvina Hazen, which is easily one of the most controversial characters written in recent date. She seizes power of Clan Jade Falcon during the Ill Clan era start by simply being as ruthless as humanly possible. That's her entire Mongol doctrine, is if I get away with it, it is honorable, functionally.
That sounds like a Jade Falcon.
Yeah, no, and that's why she goes along like, God, there's so many examples. She irradiates the entire planet's water supply because they resisted her for too long. She burns entire crop fields. She actually institutes a level of like starvation amongst Clan Hell's horses so they'll help her. She forces them to assist her in her invasion of Terra. All these ridiculous fucking things, these absolute pants on the head war crimes. Malvina Hazen almost strays directly into Amaris territory. The only reason she doesn't is she didn't have enough time and she dies way lamer. I believe she gets her throat slit by a traumatized child she kept as a basically this entire time. No, that's how Malvina Hazen dies. That child she's been palling around with from her last genocide, she keeps this as a trophy, basically.
Oh my god!
This homicidal little girl slits her throat while she's in an apartment, like under Alfred's like not protection, but like his control. And she's a political enemy who's been more or less politely jailed. And no, that's what I mean. Like compared to Stefan Amaris being, summarily executed and erased from history, by Kerensky, which just, it feels better.
At least they publicly, well, they didn't publicly execute him. They took him out back and shot him.
They dealt with him the way Stefan Amaris deserved to be dealt with. Stefan Amaris deserved to die like a common criminal, which is what happened to him. Meanwhile, Malvina Hazen dies like a weird child groomer, slit by the let her keep her human trophy.
More like a warlord, like a Badlands warlord.
Yeah, like killed by your concubine, essentially. I'm not implying anything like that. But that's kind of what I'm saying. Like,
well, it's actually a common trope in stories. Like, that's a common trope in like dystopian stories.
That is not the degree of retribution Malvina Hazen deserves for the long litany of crimes against humanity. It's just not the way a Jade Falcon has to go out.
She wasn't a Jade Falcon the moment she started committing these war crimes.
You would say that, but then again, Smoke Jaguar didn't have a problem with it until their fucking end. Like, that's my issue with clan ideology, though, as a whole kitchen sink thing, is that functionally it is an ideology that modifies itself to essentially say that force is force and force is good.
I think that's a relevant and fair aspect, I would say.
No, like, don't get me wrong. Clanner society has to adapt or it will die. And the clanners themselves understand that. The animals that they chose as totems were picked because they were adaptable, intelligent, capable creatures that represented a key aspect of their warrior society and the way they wish to conduct themselves. It's interesting that you would pick an animal, though, to aspire to the highest pieces of humanity. And that's kind of my philosophical issue with Nicholas Kerensky as a person.
Okay, that's perfectly fair. I think that is perfectly fair. While subjective in opinion, it is. I think that is a fair argument for sure.
But anyway, moving on to the actual Ill Clan era, I guess I'll give you my summation. And then we watch Alaric Ward kind of bumblefuck his way to victory, which is the only way I can explain it, because the books are trying to make it sound like, oh, Alaric Ward's just a genius. He's just the supremely capable, smarter than Attila the Hun, more capable than Napoleon. And in reality, he just seems to kind of blunder into victory after. Aha! I hid these artillery pieces on a hill, and that's like the height I see of his ability as a commander. Is he can hide shit real good and sucker punch you. But that's not tactics. That's not strategy. That's an ambush, and that's like a basic bargain bin. We don't see Alaric Ward brilliantly outmaneuvering his enemies. We see him occasionally playing intersphere politics badly and winning because he stabs anyone who he can't outmaneuver.
So here's my thing.
Yeah.
Here's my thing, and I think this is going to be a real hot take.
Go ahead.
I
Do your
think
best.
that this is on purpose because Alaric Ward is failing upwards. And this is a commentary on people who do this. They fail upwards, and when they're finally surmounted with the consequences of their actions, they're going to get ramrodded so hard by the consequences, it will be unfathomable in what happens.
That's entirely possible.
I can see that, yeah.
I genuinely think that's where it's going.
My favorite part of Ill Clan lore is how they deal with Devlin Stone. And a lot of people didn't like Devlin Stone when he was incepted because I was one of the rare few people.
You'll have to explain that one. You'll have to explain that one.
Do I have to explain how he dies?
Yes.
Do I have to spoiler?
Yeah.
Okay.
Spoiler warning.
Devlin Stone, spoiler warning. Devlin Stone is smothered in his bed by Alaric Ward Sakon after he basically states that Terra is a poison chalice, you're all doomed. But I love that because that is so much Devlin Stone's story. A man supposedly just released from a concentration camp of Word of Blake, or re-education camp, whatever the fuck you want to, however you want to slice that. He escapes from that potential situation to lead a rebellion that inevitably overtakes the Word of Blake Protectorate and kind of subsumes it from within.
Yeah.
And then he becomes our plucky resistance leader turned brilliant autocrat who creates, basically rebuilds the Terran hegemony brick by brick using a multinational, multicultural force. Clanners, whoever the hell he can get his hands on, he uses freely to build this utopian sort of neo...
People who are willing to follow the message as guerrilla fighters.
Yeah. This military social state, basically.
Yeah.
And it works for damn near several generations. It works until it inevitably falls apart due to infighting, because that's what multi-ethnic societies kind of end up doing once the big strong man and the message is gone. Once it's back to fighting for themselves. We saw this with the original clans.
Yep.
And then, but the thing is, he was put in stasis. He had himself frozen, and I will return when my people need me. And one of my favorite implications is that he was brain damaged by the actual cryo system, which makes sense because it was never a perfect system to begin with.
Yep.
And so he comes back wrong. So once they and that's the one thing I love about the fall of the Republic of the Sphere. They bring their hero back. His fated return happens, and it turns out his brain is half fucking much. They just throw all their faith behind him. They all die fighting for him because they so believe that their Messiah has returned, and he's just a vegetable. Like, he's an intelligent, violent vegetable, but he's a vegetable functionally.
Yeah.
But the fact that this man sacrificed so much. This man fought against the Word of Blake, and it was a righteous crusader in his own time, a hero of his age, and he is smothered to death by some fucking genetic inbred brought up to believe he's the fucking Messiah of the clans. And he's smothered by his booty Carl Sakon. It's the funniest shit to me. But at the end of the day, Devlin Stone's last words are, Terra is a poison chalice. It will kill you. And if we look at Battletech,
I think that makes sense.
No, if we look at the history of the setting, it is a fact. It is truth. The Terran Alliance, right?
Yep.
The first premier state of humanity in the stars fell apart due to revolving door politics. It fell apart due to the dumbest reasons and the dumbest situations and left millions to starve. It fell apart like a bumbling joke. And then you have the Terran hegemony instead. The Terran hegemony is this wondrous, all-powerful state from the cradle of mankind, from the finest worlds man has ever built. and it's overtaken by a fat man who loves shonies. You know what I mean? And he systematically annihilates it, basically for petty vengeance. The Terran hegemony dies because Stefan Amaris has a generations-long grudge with how they mistreated his great-great-grandpappy. It's literally some Hatfield and McCoy shit is why he orders the genocide of hundreds of planets worth of people.
Literal trillions of people died during the American Civil War for what is essentially a family feud.
Yeah, 100%. It is essentially a family feud. A one-sided family feud that the Camerons were not aware they were a part of, by the way.
Yeah, no idea. They actually thought they were friends.
No, and it just... And so then Amaris in turn is killed on his palace on Terra. He masterminds the most elaborate, brilliant coup in human history and dies, put up against the wall with all of his advisors and family members and unceremoniously shot by unnamed Star League soldiers. And then in turn, Comstar. And Comstar, again, each power that owns Terra is this brilliant definer of their era, and then they die.
In like the dumbest way possible.
Comstar fell apart because of an internal fucking schism because a foreign general they hired executed their crazy ideological head. And that all devolved into the jihad. And even then, Comstar's been ousted. Oh, well, they survive, but they just kind of linger on until they finally die miserably.
Yeah.
And then Word of Blake goes out in a blaze of fucking manic glory. And then you have the Republic of the Sphere, which, again, defined its era, brought in an ushered an era of peace so profound mercenary work fell off. Several mercenary companies ceased to exist because of a lack of fucking work. That's insane in Battletech to even say out loud. And then he's promptly smothered on a deathbed by some genetically engineered bastard offspring. It's the funniest shit. But no, and so I expect
Alaric Ward, a noble end on Terra.
Alaric Ward and his Wolf Empire, if it doesn't basically die on Terra, I will be disappointed with the writers.
Yeah.
Because this precedent is so set up. This precedent is so core to Battletech that once you get to the top of the heap, the only way is down and in an expeditious manner.
Yeah, like, at the top, there is no crowning achievement. It is just a hole that brings you all the way to the bottom, which is the graveyard.
Yeah.
And he has to die in some, like, stupid kind of meaningless way. He needs to die in a stupid way, because that is the precedent that's been set.
Alec Ward...
Okay, how have we not murdered our people yet?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that, let's see here. So, in the way the Dark Age is set up, and what I've read so far, this is kind of what I'm getting the vibe of. The Wolf Empire is existing, and doing a good job of existing. But the problem is we have no idea what the internal politics of most of clan-occupied space looks like right now. We have no idea. Well, we know the Jade Falcon Protectorate's still holding on somewhere. We know Clan Hell's Forces is kind of
swear to God, if Alaric Ward dies of something stupid...
He should.
That's the thing. He doesn't have to die. He does have to die stupidly, but it has to be poetically stupid. That's the thing.
Yeah. There's got to be a good reason.
Like old age or something.
Oh no! They cannot let him go out like that. That's not fair. He needs to die a dumb way.
So okay, I've been writing a bit of fan fiction for a while, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I have the best way for Alaric Ward to die. He should die like Cameron died. Not necessarily as naive about it, but no, some new invader, some new person who intends to hold Terra under their sway, kicks in his throne room doors. Alaric Ward has exhausted his finest warriors, and his brilliant strategies have failed him. And so he stands ready for his final battle with this individual, mano a mano, in the clan way, and then they just shoot him. They just put one through his chest.
Just unceremoniously just blast him.
Well, I was thinking maybe like friendly fire.
No, I mean, that's possible. That's another angle. I really like the idea that Alaric Ward might be betrayed by his fellow clanners because Alaric Ward has perverted what clan honor even means.
Yeah.
Alaric Ward
go the Nicholas Currency route.
No. So here's another spoiler, right? Vlad Ward, again, a fucking hero of the invasion era. Vlad Ward is an important character in everything. Vlad Ward is unceremoniously throat slit just seconds before his bodyguards could arrive because Alaric Ward seeks an opportunity. Alaric Ward sees, hey, I could kill him and take Conrad. I'm just going to do it. It's on an impulse like a psychopath. I would like that if some Smoke Jaguar, remnant, because they rebuilt the Smoke Jaguars, which would be great if he rebuilds Smoke Jaguar and then Smoke Jaguar is the Scorpion on the frog's back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now that you've killed me, you shall both surely die. Well, Lamau.
Just bang bang.
No, because that makes sense. It makes sense that after Alec Ward has perverted, because that makes sense, perverted plant honor for his own means, and he's irrevocably damaged it. Everyone knows. Everyone knows he killed Vlad Ward. No one can say it. No one can accuse him of it, because, at the same time, he's a dead Loki agent. But we all know. And in time, it's very, very clear. Other people know that Alec Ward has seized power through dishonorable means while pretending to be honorable. That just means he set a precedent. I would love to see some young Smoke Jaguar from the new Fidelis crop, completely removed from proper Smoke Jaguar tradition, mind you. These people have been living in the Republic of the Sphere for generations. Just decide, it would be very expedient if I killed Alec Ward and seized ill conscience.
Yeah.
Bang. It could totally be a thing. And I think that would also be hilarious, that as, much like the Spanish Revolution, as the enemies of the clans move in, the clanners turn on each other, which sounds very clanner.
Yeah. No, that sounds extremely clanner. And the only thing about that is I just don't want them to cop out in the end, because there's a potential of them having a really amazing story here by not copping out in the end and letting the clanners as an ideologue fall apart.
Well, here's the thing. You could kill off the Inner Sphere clans and there's still the Homeworld clans, which I would argue the Homeworld clans are not better written than Inner Sphere clans.
For sure.
No, Clan Star Adder is amazing. And the fact that few people even know Clan Star Adder is Star Adder masterminded the overtake of all of Clan Space. No? What's up? Never mind. I think
I'm
he's
just like,
struggling.
who?
Clan Star Adder,
that's the
yeah.
thing. Nobody knows. Nobody fucking knows Clan Star Adder, and they currently own all of Clan Space. They are the premier clan, and they manage that through brilliant maneuvering, through exploiting the political divide between Crusader and Warden. They defeated the society. They literally outmaneuvered several clans to get to the top of the heap, and we now know nothing about them. We know nothing about the homeworld.
Well, because we're focusing solely on the Inner Sphere at the moment.
Yeah.
That's fine, but the problem is that we need to have this contrast. Because if you're going to go the route of, the Inner Sphere clans basically degenerate into murderous tribes of cratocracy, might makes right. Essentially, it looks like the Inner Sphere clans are fast trending towards orchood. You know what I mean? They're starting to really abandon any joke of honor, and it's just like, no, I beat you, that makes you my bondsman. That's about the most they've kept.
They're starting to turn into like Klingons who separated from the fold. They're just war bands.
Yeah. And that's good. That's kind of a realistic evolution, because that's why Kerensky left the Inner Sphere in the first place. The Inner Sphere is tainting politically to any group that exists for long in there. They will all become like the houses. And what do we know the houses to be? Despotic, decadent overlords with occasional sparkles of good humanity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this is another thing that I have, and this is why I really hope they don't kill off House Steiner, but it looks like they might actually do it. You can't kill off the houses. You can kill off as many clans as you like. You could purge the clans from the setting. Houses are Battletech, as far as I'm concerned. The successor states make Battletech, and you can't remove them. To state that the Davian line would be gone, or that the Steiner line is gone, that would it would destroy the setting.
Yeah, I agree.
Not necessarily in a bad way. Let's say, like, if you decide,
again, it might not destroy the setting. It might cause some problems.
It would irreparably damage the setting in a way that it will never recover from.
Exactly. Even if you decided, like, new House Steiner rose up. Here you go. It's under the old, like, Alistair fucking line. Like, it doesn't matter. You've so changed it. And that's my one concern, is House Steiner cannot die. And if they kill him off and the whole Lyran region becomes this... Like, don't get me wrong, I would love, like, Chaos March Mark II. Are you fucking serious? Because Chaos March was shit. Chaos March was amazing as a time period and place. That's what I love about Chaos March 2, is that the Chaos March was a time and place. It existed only for maybe a few decades, And if Steiner Space just evolved into a bunch of warring little states, clanner and periphery, pirate and not pirate, that'd be cool. but it wouldn't really be Battletech anymore. It'd be some strange new permutation. Because Battletech is House Steiner, just as much as it is House Merrick, House Liao, House Davian, and House Korea. Because the houses are the only political entities that have survived over 1,000 years of conflict inside. That's what I love about it. Terra, anyone who owns Terra dies in a few generations. It's just a fact. If you're a Curitan, you can be half destroyed by civil war and still a Curita will take the throne. Still, the Dragonis Combine's borders will exist. They're timeless entities. To a degree. But that's kind of what I mean. You can't kill these entities. If you kill them off, you start destabilizing the entire setting.
Well, I think the other part is like, if you're also going to go to the direction of, I'm going to destroy the bloodline of the Steiners, you just have to end up subsuming the bloodline of the Steiners. You become the Steiner.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that
and that's
Merrick
what Alaric
is.
Ward is trying to do. He has a really shitty claim to the throne, but it's a claim to the throne.
Well, this is also my issue. This is another issue that I have, is that anti-clan sentiment is not what it should be in your sphere, and that bothers me. You're telling me people just accept these assholes just existing? But first things first, let's just get over the taboo of genetic engineering. A good quarter of the inner sphere do not consider human beings who come out of a fucking tube human. And there's a good reason not to consider clanners human necessarily. Now they are, if you really want to get down to brass tacks, sure. But realistically, there should be so much more anti-clan just bigotry just out there in the world, and it's just never shown. And I
think it's more that these planets are so tired of constant fighting that they just will pull up the flag of the weak. Especially in these border regions, which the clanners controlled in the Wolf Empire.
So you're saying it's kind of like a third succession war kind of thing, where it's just like, it changes every week.
Yeah, pretty much.
Except that is not necessarily the case anymore, because clanners not taking border worlds. They're taking core worlds. Core worlds that have been Lyran, Merrick, they have been this way for
They're taking the Chaos
years.
March.
No, that's the thing. Wolf Empire is now more than just Chaos March. Wolf Empire has entire hunks of Steiner space. Wolf Empire has entire hunks of Merrick space. They own chunks of other successor states that have not been owned by any other successor state, and they face no serious resistance. And I think that's nonsense. The clan society, Frank, go ahead.
I think it might be that. Where was I going with this?
Well, I don't think that they're not receiving resistance. I think they are, but we just haven't seen it yet. Yeah, I don't think they've discussed this yet. I think this is one of the things that is coming, but has not been expanded upon like it should yet.
Mm.
But again, we don't know because it's not over.
Yeah, it's just something they're not talking about.
Well, this is my thing, though, because they did kind of touch on it in Bonfire of Worlds. Because we see how Alaric Ward treats the civilian population as a bargaining chip and as a threat. He actually has an entire Steiner fleet transporting a bunch of his native peoples, a bunch of clan civilians. And at some point, he literally abandons those people because he used them as a bargaining chip to convince the Steiners he would not turn on them. And then he turns on them. And we never hear what happens to those civilians, but I can imagine nothing particularly fucking nice. Steiners aren't, Curitan, so they're not going to execute a lot of them, but, they're all in a prison colony somewhere. And Alaric Ward doesn't give shit. That's kind of my point, is that clanners treat their civilians as resources, more so and more openly and nakedly than any house does. I don't understand how the idea, there would be no more fighting, and I understand that kind of sells them to people, the idea that, hey, a rocket will never go flying into your puppy field and kill a family because we fight war a different way. But that's not true anymore. In Bonfire of Worlds, clanners actively engage in open fighting in cities amongst throngs of civilians. Alaric Ward uses a throng of fleeing civilians as a human shield to take the Lyran capital. These are things he does repeatedly, over and over again. And you're telling me that at no point a guerrilla movement is not going to become as widespread as the ones who fought the Blakists and dethrone his ass.
Yeah, we have a comment here, actually. Sharpie says, there's a guy that I follow here on Twitch, and he's a die-hard clanner. And to me, it's ridiculous because the Inner Sphere as an Innersphere guy for years, before we even knew about the clans, it's a huge disconnect between 50-year-olds and 40-somethings. It's basically a disconnect between people who played Clan Invasion and those after. And I would definitely agree with that kind of concept. The Clan Invasion is ambitious in its scope and descent, but I think part of it is it introduced a unstable faction that basically uprooted the idea of what Battletech is. It's not a bad thing, but it seems to not line up with the intentions that, you know, Battletech exists in this realm of constant reciprocal thought, and that it will always come back to being the 5 successor states.
Because these are the only dynasties that know how to manage power, and it's really a matter of inertia, right? The successor states got so large and so powerful so quickly that functionally that inertia from the Age of War has maintained and sustained them onward. Because no state, no power in Battletech matches them in raw numbers and fiscal ability. Planners win wars.
Too big to fail is what comes to mind with that.
Functionally, although we know that's not 100% true, but it is more or less.
They should fail eventually, because no state is forever.
Not entirely so. Remember that the Golden Horde, the last remnant of Genghis Khan's horde, existed until the fucking White Russian army destroyed them in like 1066. From an empire that was founded in an age when black powder was kind of just coming into its heyday. Like that is a ridiculous longevity for certain ideologies. That's why I'm saying you really can't kill Steiner space, because if you do, there'll always be someone with a Steiner flag, even if it's only a handful of them. And eventually, but the idea that a state can't last forever, I disagree with the houses, because the houses are not single states. This is something that Battletech does very well. No power is simply a power. It is simply a dozen or so ideologies in one trench coat. Steiner space is not just, Donegal and a few others and fuck all the rest. No, each single planet is home to a powerful merchant family, a wealthy merchant family, who in of themselves are their own functioning little states. A state made up of other states does not just fall to entropy. It simply rebuilds itself over and over again, which is what the successor states have done functionally. There's been the Davian Civil Wars, Curitan Civil Wars. These states have shed skins and reformed themselves 1,000 times over, whereas the Terran hegemony only broke it.
Yeah, with every iteration, every era, the successor states are essentially adapt or die. And the point is that they're large enough and in scope that they should always be able to adapt or die, in the sense that they should always be able to adapt even if their name changes in some way, shape, or form. And for the most part, I don't think their name should ever really change, because they're too big an entity in terms of the feudalistic sense to go away from it.
I think the clan issue could easily be kind of sidestepped, this idea, they're this weird volatile force. Just the periphery states have always been that. Always have they been a weird volatile entity. I understand. Yeah, after the American Civil War and the Unification War, they were really not entities insofar as they could threaten the houses. But this is why I really think that if Dark Age is smart, and I'm kind of sad they're going the other way, they should really beef up the Marian hegemony. The Marian hegemony should be the new terrifying boy on the block. They should be kicking Merrick ass right now because they're under the rule of a weak leader. And I like that idea. The rising periphery should really be where we focus our attention. I think the rising periphery would be a very interesting thing. Yeah. Because periphery states, like it or not, are just as valid as successor states.
They are.
On my tombstone.
That's going to be a thing that's going to be here. I want to see a rise of the periphery as well.
I agree. I 100% agree.
All the writing trends there. All the writing shows that this is happening.
Give the Turian Concordat their navy back.
God damn yes. Let these states be a threat. Because if they're a threat, then suddenly the whole dynamic of the sphere changes. Because you could have Canopians fighting the Wolf Empire for territory. Realistically, that's the thing. They could broker a thing with the Capellans. The Capellans can probably state, all right, here, we'll give you the means and the travel, and you will fight our enemies for us for your own gain. Which has happened before. It's essentially what the Varangian Guard was. I can totally see, some Davian finally saying, fine, let the Turians have a fucking stab at this. Let them fight the Clans. Let them bleed meaninglessly on quest.
So,
and meanwhile, go ahead.
So one of the other things that Sharpie mentions, it's a great world. I almost hate that the game takes away from RP. It cries out for RP so much. So as this group is, we are a roleplay group for the Battletech A Time of War RPG. So we absolutely agree with you on that. This game is a testament to RP and how good it can be when it's done correctly.
Is far less of a war game when you really get down to it, in that every battle mech sheet has a name for a pilot and a skill level and a story that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be as deep as you want it. You can be John Q, fucking, Free World League trooper fighting for the cause, and you have nothing beyond that. Or you can be the most weird, avant-garde goofball that found up few pieces of a mech and put it together, and now you're off on a gallivanting world tour.
Catman.
Catman. Or you could be Catman. I mean,
you could be Catman.
I kind of want Victor here to be somebody that could infiltrate anywhere and explore this on my own and be like, all right, I gotta play this game, that game, and this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that Catman is a great example of what a periphery character can do in terms of being dangerous and capable.
Well, I have a really brilliant idea for that, actually. I call it. So we'll see if everyone thinks so.
He basically is just anti-mech infantry.
Well, I mean, like you basically built the ideal guerrilla fighter, which is ideally what the periphery has always been. And so two of the other comments that Sharpie made, the fact that the computer game is in the periphery is a testament to what you're saying, and I think you could play a dropship or jump ship crew as a total RP game. Absolutely you can. I absolutely agree with that statement.
What is Battletech but Firefly? But let's all be real here.
Yeah.
Firefly, people loved it because it's functioning what Battletech is. That's what it is. It's the Wild West. You should add a couple battle mechs every now and then.
So it's the Wild West with giant robots. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Firefly was more on the person than the giant stoppy robot, though. But I what the hell is that? I see.
Yeah, but you can have those kinds of stories.
Battletech is also a combined arms game. That's the part that everybody forgets, is that there is more than just the stompy robots. They might be on the cover, but there is so much more around that, because it is a complete cohesion of tactics that's in there. There are warships, there are pirate ships, there is infantry drop mechanics, there are tanks, there are aerospace fighters. Like, every sphere of battle is covered in Battletech. It's kind of the ideal thing about Battletech, is that it takes the idea of a mech and then places it on a battlefield that already exists today. It's just introducing that as a weapon, if it were viable.
Oh yeah, it just adds it as another, like, military force, where you need the in the real world, you need the trifecta of your naval, air, and ground forces. It's just now you have in Battletech naval, ground, air, space, because they have space and we don't, and we also have our mechanized.
It's just an extension of ground combat.
Yeah, all of the places, basically all of the vectors that we are fighting war have grown more in terms of the technology, where we have the stompy robots, we have our fighters throwing down napalm on unsuspecting peoples.
We commit lots of war crimes. I mean, like, that's
lots of war crimes.
all the war crimes.
In reference to in reference to napalm, actually, this reminds me of one of my favorite passages from was arguably like one of my favorite. Does anyone here read the Great Death Legion? Right.
The original Great Death Legion trilogy?
Yeah. Yes.
I've read those.
Yeah,
Those
so
are
my favorite.
Yeah, some of my favorite books, yeah.
So then you know the passage. My favorite passage is where Grayson Carlisle holds that locust up with a rocket launcher. It's a locust. It's a fully 20-ton death machine. It has been rampaging through this town. He's been chasing it on the back of an improvised PPC carrier with a bunch of periphery world natives. And then he hops out with a fucking like M7 log. Like it's implied that he calls it Willie Pete. Inferno is just normal napalm with a little bit of fucking phosphorus thrown in for flavor. He holds this mech up, a man with a rocket launcher, and says, "Look, you're either gonna get out and surrender your mech, or I'm gonna boil you alive in your cockpit. Because you know, one rocket, and it's over." That typifies to me what Battletech really is. A lone man with nothing more but a rocket launcher and hope can fight a 20-ton behemoth on even footing if he's smart enough.
I think this also comes back to the idea of what each mech class invokes in terms of weight class. Is like a light mech is to an infantryman a monster, a kaiju. A assault mech is the kaiju of the battlefield, though. It is unbelievably strong, unbelievably powerful, and is used for the conquering and destruction of people.
And planets. So for me, I don't usually like Big Red 40K's takes, but I do like his takes on weight classes for mechs.
Yeah.
And I think
which is where I'm pulling that from, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
Shout out to Big Red.
Statement is, no. I mean, hey, I'm subscribed to his channel just because I don't like every take. Doesn't mean I don't like.
I'll be right back.
Yep.
Because there's this brilliant line where he says, "An assault mech is not the hero of the story. An assault mech is a monster that someone unleashed for a singular, brutal purpose, and that's to kill the hero of the story." 9 times out of 10. And I think no mech actually embodies this more to me than the King Crab. I think the King Crab is like the best assault mech in terms of like style and function. Because what is the King Crab but a hero killer? Its purpose is to find the biggest, meanest thing on the field, and in a few minutes and crush it. That's the thing. This thing doesn't just, I'm going to go take out this Atlas in like this pitched battle. No, this thing rounds a corner on an Atlas. The Atlas pilot has 5 seconds to go, "Oh God, no, I'm way too close." And this King Crab opens up with everything it's got and tears limbs off of a 100-ton mountain of metal. We're talking something that will cripple or kill a victor in like one go. That's terrifying.
In 1 or 2 volleys,
There's a level of firepower that you don't see. And I can't imagine being an infantryman. You know, that's what I mean. The King Crab is beautiful for Curetans because that is the Curetan. That is the God. There's this wonderful animation made by I'm losing the name.
DC Bruins.
It's the guy who did it. Yeah, DC Bruins, the Hunchback. That whole animation where you have a Hunchback fighting a bunch of Curetans in Rasselhog space.
Yeah.
And he takes out the fucking, he fights the general. He defeats the dragon, and then a King Crab comes out of the smoke and just decimates him. That's what the King Crab is. It's the bad guy's mech. It's the mech that rounds the corner and destroys our mentor figure in any narrative. It is a dragon.
It's a big bad evil guy. It's the BBG. It's the big bad evil guy.
That's the thing. If you look at a lot of Battletech fluff, anything that's been written, when has a good guy had the goddamn capability? Name me one good instance where it's our hero piloting the King Crab. It never happens.
Yep.
Because
it never happens, even though I like the King Crab.
No, I like the King Crab too. That's the point. The King Crab is a legend killer. That's its purpose. It is unleashed with sole and singular intent to destroy something that is so important to the enemy as to be a rallying point. It is a morale breaker. It is a daisy cutter.
Yeah, I would definitely say the daisy cutter in that one. Like, a King Crab is a daisy cutter. For sure.
Because, like I said, you have a victor on your side. You're Savian forces. And victor is another thing. Like, this is my whole thing about battle mechs, right? Battle mechs, like tanks in World War II, inform you about the culture of the people who built them. Because if we look at what a society builds for a weapon, you know what they value inherently, right? This is why the Sherman defeated, at the end of the day, every German tank thrown at it. Because it wasn't so much the Sherman was better. And yeah, sure, you also have the argument of attrition, sheer numbers, and force, and the superior industrial output. But I think the biggest key is the Sherman has 3 ways to escape, right? If your tank's about to cook off and blow up, most of the crew of a Sherman can escape. If a King Tiger is about to blow up, there is 2 exits. One is a hatch on top, and one is a hatch on the bottom. Both of those can be covered in fire pretty quickly.
Yep.
Most King Tiger crews died in their tank. Most Sherman crews survived and hopped into their 2nd or 3rd tank and maintained experience. In a lot of the same way, and that shows you that America is a democracy that kind of inherently values the individual, because that's kind of the way our system is set up. Meanwhile, we all know the Nazis. They did not value the individual. And I'll say no more. Meanwhile, you see the same thing in Battletech and mech design, right? Like, Kerensky had the King Crab built because the King Crab was a necessary weapon. There were so many assault mechs on the field. There was so many heavy armor on the field. There were so many weapon emplacements that could easily destroy mechs that it became necessary to have something that just...
It's also the same reason for the Night Star.
Exactly.
It's
a response.
Yeah, a response of necessity in the face of insurmountable odds.
And then, but what's beautiful is that then that recontextualizes these assault mechs. And you're right, in Succession Wars, they're mythical fucking monsters. They're the last of their kind. Giants from an age long past who come only to bring death and nothing else.
Yeah.
That's why the Atlas is probably, I know the Mad Cat's in the comic, but the Atlas is the most. Because the Atlas looks like a weapon of the Succession Wars. It is built for brute intimidation. And yet, at the end of the day, it was made by Kerensky to keep a bunch of people in line. Kerensky was such a bastard, he would commission a 100-ton death machine built for maximum intimidation value to scare periphery peasants. That's what its purpose was. It was a tool of terror in its own time.
Welcome back.
Sorry, an absolute rant. But that's kind of my point, is that then each successive
I've been just enjoying listening to this sort of thing, because I don't...
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't have my own opinion on this at the moment. I'm still relatively new to Battletech.
So actually, that's a great question. Let's go around the table really quick and define when we started playing Battletech. Because technically speaking, I played Battletech in 2001 is when I started. And I didn't know I was playing Battletech because I was still playing the old MechClicks game when it first came out. And so I started in the Dark Age and I had no idea what I was doing. I was a little kid who had fucking no idea what Battletech was. But I remember the Mad Cat, and I specifically very much remember the Marauder, because it was like one of the mechs that I would use all the time, and I would mess around with until I broke its fucking arms off. So the more recent time that I've gotten into Battletech and actually learned something about it was 3 years ago now. So that was back in 2019. So Chiranu, let's go with you next. When did you get into Battletech?
Me?
Yeah.
Middle of last year.
Last year.
2021. Middle of the pandemic. I was bored as fuck. And looking for something, and I thought, I remember my friend saying something about giant robots, so I better look into this.
Okay. Orinoka, let's go with you now.
I didn't really start playing until about 2 years ago. 2 years, 3 months. When a mutual friend of me and Ethan was putting together a game, and I joined in on that. That was my first real foray into the role playing. I did play the Battletech game on Steam, but that was more because I had played a PlayStation 2 game called Ring of Red, and that has its own like stompy robots, but in like alternate timeline like World War II.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. But yeah, I've only in the grand scheme of things recently got into Battletech, and I don't
Yeah, I
I
think
haven't really delved
that's
into it.
where I started hearing the inklings of Battletech, was the Battletech 2018 game, and I'm like, oh yeah, giant robots are cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
I
Shotgun.
never played it until fairly recently.
Go ahead, Shotgun.
Oh, good. I'm unleashed.
Unleash.
Forgive me. I'm severely caffeinated. So I started in the same time I got into 40K, which was around 2013. I was in high school, heavily medicated, and bored. And 40K had my interest for a good long time because 40K is 40K, and I'm an edgy boy. But Battletech has always been in the periphery of my vision. You know, ever since 2013, ever since high school. And I only recently really got into it, maybe more around 2016, 2017. And that was because I started picking up shit about the jihad. And jihad was a little bit more modern. It's definitely, before my time. I was born in 1995, so I know jihad started way earlier than that. I was wee babe. But jihad era was kind of where I cut my teeth because it's what appealed to me as someone coming over from 40K. There's like a psychotic machine worshipping cult destroying the universe. Oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Cozy. But over time, and it's given me a really interesting perspective of jihad, because for me, Devlin Stone was like this cool, mysterious, like action hero character. He was this ephemeral hero that saved the galaxy, and then I get to see him denigrated in the future. And I get that. Like I've got the full concept and scope of Battletech now. I understand why people feel a certain way. Damn, for me, jihad was the shit. Cybernetic psychopaths with super advanced crazy mechs they wire themselves into. It's why I think my first love among battle mechs, it was it was the goddamn Buccaneer. This really early wobby axe wielding mech, because it was just a better Hatchet Man, and then I fucking love the Hatchet Man so much. And so and that's the thing. One of these poor bastards like, oh, so what's your favorite mech? I really like the Buccaneer. It's the Buccaneer. Yeah, I'm not talking. Been my experience a couple times. Not a lot, but because I really liked that concept. And then, I read Ideal War really early on. I found an old paper-bound, copy, all threadbare in my local library. And then, later on, Razor Fist made an excellent reading. Which, if anyone wants to listen to some good Battletech fiction, Ideal War.
I don't like her. I don't like him personally, but
But it's fine. I mean, hey, you don't have to like him for that. I'm just promoting the video because it's good reading. And from Ideal War, I got this really beautiful idea of what Battletech is it's this wonderful set of anachronisms thrown together. You've got a man reading, God, I can't remember the book, but you get this man reading about Arthurian legend and like adapting it to a modern battlefield with napalm, jet fighters, and hulking two-legged mechs. And because Battletech is the setting it is, that actually works as an ideology. You can make a knightly order in Battletech fight like medieval knights, and it works because the technology is sort of falling in on itself. The era of advancement has happened, but mankind is still the same animal. And I like that's what Battletech ultimately tells us, is it doesn't necessarily matter how far into the future you go. Man is a man. And if he is not man, then he is something fundamentally monstrous, which is what I like about Battletech. Sort of like shows us when a man stops being a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, where the kind of buck stops and where humanity diverges from its moralistic intentions and devolves into monstrosity and abomination.
This is why I like the Men of Domine, because the Men of Domine, anybody who doesn't know, is the word of like super elite cybernetic kill teams, right?
Yeah.
They either form commando groups or battle mech.
They're Atom Smasher.
They're the best the word of Blake has to offer. Yeah. But Men of Domine, the whole ethos behind them is we are the monsters that we hope will never be made again in the future.
Yep.
Men of Domine actively sacrifice their humanity to bring about this utopian Blakist vision, knowing full well they will never be a part of it. And I love that. That is ideology over the human self. It is the ultimate expression of fanaticism. And I love it. And I'm just kind of sad that while jihadists get kind of painted with this brush of like, oh, ultimate bad guys in setting, worse than Amaris, functionally, clanners are not too far removed from that simple credo. We will change ourselves for the sake of our ideology, consequences be damned, all ends to the means. And I like that because that was not the initial inception of clan ideology, but it is what it becomes over time. Anyway, but that's where I cut my teeth. I cut my teeth in the jihad, and I've never stopped.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think this has been a fantastic set of conversations. It is now just about 1 o'clock, so we're going to cut it off there and save it for another time to talk more stuff.
I didn't say much, but I was sitting here and listening.
No, you're perfectly fine. Hey, everybody's opinion is always valid when it comes to Battletech. The best thing about it is that you have people who know a lot about the setting and have a lot of information to share, and you have people who are just learning about it who can then give their opinion about how they feel about it. Every point of view is great. It makes it better when we have more people learning about the setting. Not only to hear about the stories that have been written, but also to get their feelings about what they like and dislike about them. That's the whole point of this discussion. This has been Let's Talk's Battletech. I'm Arco's Raid, also known as GM Ethan. Anybody else want to sign off with anything that they want to say?
Nope.
I will say, while you're correct, everybody's opinion is valid. That does also stand except for Capellans, right?
Yeah.
Just so we're clear.
Dirty Capella.
Dirty Capellans.
As a Capellan, I am offended.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this has been lovely. I hope we can do it again sometime. Goodbye, Internet. Have been Lord Shocker.
Yeah, you guys have fun.
All right. Bye-bye.